afternoon and welcome to the Arts, Housing and Community Forum. My name is Valerie Nelson and I am a member of the board of the Gloucester Cultural Initiative, which is hosting this forum today. On behalf of the full GCI board, I'd like to welcome all of you and offer just a few specific notes of thanks. To the Gloucester Cultural Council for their financial support of this event, to our mayor and Councillor Val Gilman for registering to attend and being interested in this discussion, to several of you who dedicated so many hours to the recent passage of the inclusionary housing amendments, which constitute a significant step forward in creating more affordable housing in Gloucester. Thanks for all the work you did on that and for attending today. I'd like to thank the moderator and panel. Many of you know Greg Cook, Ann Malloy, Ken Riaf, and Linda McCarriston, who will introduce themselves in a few minutes. But I'd also like to offer a special welcome to Jeanette Guzman from the North Shore CDC, and who is bringing public art to our own new Harbor Village complex on Main Street, and for bringing her fresh, younger eyes to the similar housing problems and opportunities here in Gloucester that she has seen in Salem. She'll have a chance to describe some of the projects the CDC has been sponsoring. I'd like to offer also a few words of background before we begin and hear from the panelists. This is the second in an Arts, Insight, and Community Building series hosted by the Gloucester Cultural Initiative. Last year, our first forum was on arts and climate change, with the goal of bringing the insights and artwork of local artists Susan Quaitman and Les Bartlett to educating and inspiring us into action to address threats that climate change will bring to our shores in coming years. In their own way, existential threats to our community. Today's session is the beginning of a storytelling and listening conversation that artists can similarly spark about a second major threat to the stability and vibrancy of our community, from the escalating housing costs and accelerated real estate development in our neighborhoods and along our waterfront and coastlines. We hope that these artists on the panel will spark your own reflections that you can post to the chat function and later write about in a follow-up survey we will send. We are an incredibly diverse community of artists, fishermen, and waterfront workers, retired seniors, young families, contractors, small business owners, creative professionals, and more. We live in very different neighborhoods, each beautiful in their own way, and with different identities, from downtown to Rocky Neck to Annisquam to Lanesville and Magnolia and more. But one thing that is in common is how much we value and are attached to living here in all the surrounding beauty of the ocean, the woods, the old houses and villages, and how we feel at home in such a community of caring people who look out for each other in times of need, such as this one that we are now experiencing. The key questions for today are about sharing our understanding of what has made Gloucester, Gloucester, as they say. What are the elements that are key to this identity? What is the blend of diversity and hard work and the woods and the beautiful light that keeps us all here? What is the artwork and what are the words that we can all find to describe the workings of this great place? And what are we most concerned about losing if some of the housing and development pressures intensify? Do we have the resilience growing out of our remarkable history and our attachments to this place to be able to preserve and strengthen the landscapes and the diversity of our people that we love? So I find this a remarkable thing that you come, and I'm so looking forward to all your comments in the audience and the panel. Just a few logistics. Panelists will introduce themselves and Greg Cook will lead them in the conversation. We haven't developed a script ahead of time. This is meant to be unscripted and inspired conversation in the moment amongst all of you. The panel can't represent all the different voices and perspectives in our community, so we're hoping that you will post your own thoughts and questions in the chat function. Round two, we'll open the forum up to these chat questions that will go to the panel. And then at 2:15, the formal program will end. But if you'd like to stay on for more informal sharing, we'll unmute the mics and we can all join in the discussion for a while. And now I would like to turn the forum over to Greg Cook. Greg, thanks. And can you tell us about your work and the times you have spent in Gloucester?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Valerie, and thank you to the Gloucester Cultural Initiative. I'm honored to be here with everyone, and I see lots of old friends and people from Gloucester. It's exciting to see you. I moved to Gloucester right out of college, and I lived there for 11 years and pursuing my art and becoming a journalist. I worked at the Gloucester Times for a while, and then I moved to Boston, closer to Boston for work. And there I've sort of continued, I've done stuff for the Boston Phoenix and the Globe and WBUR and such. And now I'm running my own site called Wonderland. It's an arts and culture news site. And then also with my partner, Carrie Percival, and other partners, I organize festivals and parades and participate in other people's festivals and parades, including like the Gloucester Horribles Parade, things like that. And I still come back to Gloucester regularly. It still feels like home. I come back to see friends. I come back to swim at Half Moon Beach with my kids, for Fiesta, for events at the Writers Center. And so it's wonderful to be here with you all virtually in this moment where we're still so separated by the pandemic. So let me introduce some other folks. I guess I'm going to go alphabetical, the way it is on the poster. And so I'm going to start with Jeanette Guzman. Can you introduce yourself and tell us about what brings you to this subject? What's your connection?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Jeanette Guzman. I am the Design and Placemaking Project Manager for North Shore CDC and the Punto Urban Art Museum. So I lead the efforts in putting colors and arts, engaging artists, engaging community to represent them through the artwork. And super excited to be here. I guess the link to Gloucester at the moment is a project that we're currently under construction, about to be finished in the summer. And we have similar, ideas for artwork that also identifies the community of Gloucester. And I'm very excited to be here and to learn a little bit more about Gloucester and all it has to offer, and to also be part of the conversation about arts and artists being supportive in the housing industry. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jeanette. How about Linda McCarriston? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your connection to the subject we're talking about today?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. I did write some things down earlier because I can't count on my brain as well today as usual. I'm Linda McCarriston. I'm from Lynn, Massachusetts, where I grew up in a tenement in an Irish Catholic family headed by an alcoholic, sadistic, sexual predator, batterer, and domestic rapist. The Catholic Church was the ideology in which all this was possible. I survived to the degree that I have by means of my art, which is verse, and through which I learned to use my mind. I've published 3 books of poems, various pieces of prose on the politics of violence on the small scale, and on class consciousness. And if I'm lucky, I will publish a collection of prose called Class Colored Glasses, and a 4th book of poems called The Very Idea. My 2nd book was shortlisted for the National Book Award. It is called Eva Mary. In addition to my mind, my belief in the love of animals has sustained me, especially my 30-year love affair with my mare, Mariah, whom I brought with me to Rockport when I returned after 21 years of teaching at the University of Alaska in Anchorage. I went there at age 50 by myself on the road in my pickup, sleeping in the back. Because I went there because I had no retirement. And when I left there with my retirement, I needed to find a home where I could afford to board Mariah. And that was Ken Lane's place in Rockport. She is gone now, and I am still here. So this is now my hometown. And I feel abuse of power so acutely when it is present that I cannot help myself from fighting it. And to refer to what Valerie said about me or quoting me, I want to say that as far as the arts are concerned, I consider myself an artist of ideas, not emotions. Thank you for having me, and I'm delighted to be part of this group.
Thank you, Linda. That was wonderful. How about next, Anne Malloy? Can you introduce yourself and again talk a little bit about what connects you to this subject today?
Sure. I was born and raised here in Gloucester. My family's been here for several generations, and we have a seafood company, Ocean Crest Seafoods, and we do make organic fertilizer out of the fish remains, everything that's left over after you fillet a fish, and leftover crab shell and lobster shell, utilizing 100% of the seafood that we unload here and not wasting anything. And I do some art also, and I've been active trying to save the fishing industry and working waterfront here in Gloucester. That's about it.
Thank you. That's great, Anne. How about Ken Riaf? Can you introduce yourself again and talk about your connection?
Thanks, Greg. Very good. Yeah, well, I'm living over here downstage Fort Park. Well, not in the park, but behind it. But I started out lumping over on the State Fish Pier, driving a jitterbug back in the 70s, and also went fishing, gill netting, scalloping back in the 70s and 80s. After that gig, I went to law school and started out as a housing attorney for Action Inc. Downtown here, the designated anti-poverty agency, and was there for about 8 years representing folks in landlord-tenant eviction matters, fair housing, things of that nature. So right now I'm in private practice, and I write screenplays. I write for stage and screen. Did a documentary, Charles Olson, back about 10 years ago, and recently Gloucester Stage Company has produced My Station in Life about Simon Geller, and they're doing another one coming up in this year. Think of Me Tuesday, going to be in October, about local politics. So, I do things in the housing sphere, also writing sort of these plays, social commentary on things that are taking place in our town. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken. Let me start again with the introduction to the event. It says, Gloucester's housing stock is increasingly unaffordable to residents, and our architectural spaces, waterfronts, open spaces, and ocean vistas are being altered and may continue with potential overdevelopment. And so then the organizers ask, what stories do these changes have to tell us? And so I was wondering if, I don't know, who wants to go first? So thinking about how are these changes, what changes are you seeing and what are they telling you? How about Linda? You want to start?
Sure. Well, I wrote something up, but what I realized in it was that I was not available for Val's meeting on trying to preserve the quarries, or in the light of what's gone on recently in terms of people coming to the quarries who don't use them as we do. And I came upon a term recently that's being used in some European newspapers to begin to confront publicly problems arising from recent mass immigration from other cultures. And they talk about parallel cultures and the problem of having unacknowledged cultures that are never going to meet. Parallel lines never are going to meet. They don't want to meet. They can't meet. And I was thinking that the problems with the quarries are are the result of one parallel culture that we need to talk about. Another is the global wealth that has found Gloucester. That is a parallel culture that we must contend with, and we can't deny the existence of. And it is the problem that is now jacking up housing values, making it impossible to buy a house. My house has this little cinder block, 700 square foot, Mexican poor person's house that I live in, has doubled in value since I bought it 11 years ago. The problems with this kind of wealth coming here, in my view, are many. But one of them is that these people who are coming to invest in or weekend in Gloucester in buildings that are completely out of sync with the existing scale and nature of what is here will never be anybody's neighbors. People down the street, my friends, sold their home a couple years ago. It was bought by someone, a family or a couple, and it is their fourth home. I have seen a woman there a few times, just fleetingly. Maybe she's caretaking. My neighbor said she met the woman who owned the place, introduced herself, and said, "Would you like to get to know some of the other neighbors?" And the woman said, "No." Neighborhoods are essential to any town or city, as Valerie has said. They're the basic building blocks of a place. And my big question, which I wrote about, and I'll end with the first line, do we who are here and who have implicitly agreed to abide by the social contract of living here have any obligation to each other and ourselves to preserve the rules and obligations to which we agreed? I think we are not doing that because we're permitting the Zoning Board of Appeals, for instance, to not enforce our social contract. That's my opening salvo.
Linda, can you just clarify a little bit? When you say social contract, are you talking literally the city's zoning rules? Or are you speaking more broadly?
I think our social contract is implicit in, we live in a world surrounded by rules and laws that we, if we break them to a greater or lesser degree, we suffer some penalties. And we know most of them, the big ones. I think that we have a social contract with the place we choose to own property or live. And that is itself constructed of many different rules and documents. And what we're talking about when we're talking about housing is not only physical buildings, more than the physical buildings, it is the space around the physical buildings, above, behind, beside, before. The setbacks sounds so dry and irrelevant. The creation of open space that is really not the property of the private property owner. Your setback is yours and it's not yours. And so we're talking about affordable housing in a context of an influx of great wealth, turning parts and all of Gloucester into a different place, the impact of which touches us all, whether our view, our airflow, our light is blocked, whether our egress in terms of emergency is blocked. It affects us all over the city. When 8 or 10 units get jammed into a little lot over on East Main Street, it affects me in Bayview.
Okay. Ken, do you want to go and speak about the things, the changes you're seeing, or respond to Linda in some way?
Well, I mean, I think these things are ongoing. This isn't actually new, and maybe it started even before, I can recollect. But I think it's an ongoing process where people are attracted to the area for a variety of reasons, and of course, to some extent, they're allowed to do in terms of building, construction, the things that are within the zoning ordinances. So it's not new. We had this in the 80s, influx of folks that were coming here to vacation. I mean, that's been going on for decades, maybe centuries. I don't know. People coming up here to do those things. But, there comes a point where you can only put we're trying to put 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. And, what we're seeing is the seams sort of coming apart a little bit. I mean, you only have to go downtown in the summer to see how the city was designed for less traffic and how it's coping with these new influxes. If the bridge is up down at the Cut and people are going to the beaches, it gets it gets congested to a point where it's difficult to get from A to B. So we all know about that, and the question is, are there things that we're doing to alleviate or exacerbate that situation? And a lot of these things come down to housing. If you go up to Haverhill or Lynn, Lowell, Lawrence, you see that they have a lot of factory space there that's being converted into residentials. We don't have that here. So what's taking place is that housing is going up in places where traditionally there have been small or modest dwellings. They're being torn down, and we're seeing prices go up sort of exponentially. So all of those things are taking place over, as a function of time. And I don't think that it's particularly new news. It's just a question of, where are we on that continuum, and what can we do as individuals, as a group, to address those things. We saw some of the things that the city council is doing with regard to inclusionary zoning. We have 40B issues to contend with. And I think the question, we have to ask ourselves, what do we want to be? Where do we want to go? And how do we achieve that purpose, and that goal? So,
Greg, could I just respond to that briefly?
Sure. Go ahead.
I know that this is, an ongoing process everywhere. It's, I've been here 11 years that it's become a concern to me. And I've worked very, very hard over many of those years in an effort to uphold the ordinances. And for me, the issue is clearly that the ordinances are not being upheld. I agree with you entirely. This is not new. Development's not new. We're not unique. This is happening everywhere. And the Zoning Board of Appeals, in my personal experience fighting particular issues, says this right to your face. That's it. And as far as I can see, we have everything we need. We have the best set of zoning ordinances in the North Shore. And we have people in the City Hall who do not intend to enforce them. It's all we need. We have it. We have everything we need to go forward. We have everything. It's obstructed.
Yeah. And do you have thoughts about what you're seeing change, or what, or respond, or maybe respond to what's been said so far?
Sure. So, growing up here, the whole harbor was full of fishing boats. And then there was, the fishing regulations started, which really started changing everything here. We've had tourists here my whole entire life. We love to show off our community here, and we do want tourists, and it's awesome to have tourists, but we've never had traffic like we have now. Things have changed exponentially recently. When I was growing up, everybody all different walks of life hung out together, got along together, and we had something for everybody here in Gloucester. And it's just been ever since the regulations have come down on the fishermen, which I believe a lot of them just don't even make sense. They're not legit conservation of fish restrictions. They're restrictions that are just, putting way too much pressure on these fishermen and forced so many fishermen out of business that our harbor is a fraction of its former self now because of these regulations, even though there's plenty of fish out there. Honestly, I talk to fishermen all the time, and they have to avoid fish because they're going to go over quota. And, it's not a problem. If we could just get every politician and everybody in Gloucester fighting to save our fishing industry, a lot of these problems would go away. But because of the fleet going down so much, everybody has been looking for other ways to save us money, bring our taxes down. But everything the city has done to bring our taxes down has had the opposite effect. So yes, we're having a lot more people with big bucks moving in. We had, when we were fighting against the hotel down the fort, we all wanted a hotel, but really not down the fort. But we had a woman from Nantucket get up and speak, and she gave us all the warning signs. And this was 10 years ago, maybe. And she said it happened in Nantucket with the start of a big fancy hotel. And then all the rich just kept moving and moving. And then the values went through the roof. People couldn't afford to live there. The store owners were raising the rents, forcing people out so that some of these wealthier people were ending up store owners. And it changed the whole makeup of Nantucket. She said we had the rich and the people that waited on them. And that's a warning sign that could happen here in Gloucester. And right now, I bought my house when I was, in my 30s maybe, and it was $147,000. And that's reasonable. You could afford a mortgage at that. But now, our kids, they're $500,000 if you're lucky, and you get nothing for that. And, we just lost one of our best employees who's moving to central Massachusetts just because they can afford to buy there and they can't afford to buy here. Even with a decent salary, you can't afford to buy here. You really need to be rich. And we're losing, my son is getting married. We're very worried about all of our kids being able to stay here. The traffic's horrendous. And every single thing that they say, we need to do this. We need this hotel because we need our taxes lower. We need this mega school. We need this shopping plaza where Market Basket is because it's going to help our bottom line and people can afford to stay here. These grants that we get from the state, they're great, but they're also like bribes almost. Take it or do all this and hire this developer, or you're not going to get this grant. That's kind of handcuffing us. And I think the politicians have our best interest in heart, but it's actually doing the opposite of the intention. And it's starting to really ruin the quality of life here for all the locals.
Jeanette, do you have thoughts kind of from your perspective of saying this? I think you would also, I don't want to, I'll just let you go ahead.
Thank you, Greg. This is a very interesting conversation, and I'm so glad to be a part of it, and also show respect to the city of Gloucester and people that live there and that have grown up there and that have their roots there. I would like to add, to start with, is a little bit more about me. I am also an artist. I did go to art school here in Boston. I went to Mass College of Art and Design, and I ended up studying design and architecture, and then coming back around to working with artists. And so I returned back to the art world, and I love what I do in Usher CDC, which is working with artists. And this is actually how I met Greg Cook last year for one of our Call for Arts. So very interesting conversation. I think I can speak also from the standpoint that I live in affordable housing, which otherwise I would not have been able to afford to stay in the city that I live. So I have, somewhat comfortable rent, and that really benefits me to be able to work for, with the experience of having architecture experience and working for a period of time. I could stay in the corporate world and work and get paid a lot, but I get to be able to work for a nonprofit organization that works with the arts. And I get to work for something that I believe in, that I'm my days is filled with like joy because I get to help artists and figure out opportunities. So I'm grateful in that sense that because of the affordable opportunities that were given to me, I'm able to work for a nonprofit and continue to provide and support other artists as well. So that's just a little bit of more background about me. Yeah, so I think, Linda, I love a lot of the stuff you shared with us today, and what Anne and Keen have also shared with us today. I think it's an important point to think also is that cities are changing, whether we like it or not. Communities are changing. They're being reshaped, and retaining the culture, retaining the history, retaining all that really important elements that mean a lot to us. It's valuable, and it's valuable and helpful to retain it by also educating the younger crowd, also educating and passing on why this means a lot to us. Like, why does this mean a lot to Gloucester? You know, as you know, generations change. Millennials and Generation Z too, they're different in the way that they think and the way that they use media and stuff like that, and the way that they look at things and they want to take a picture of it and they want to walk away from it, and that's it. They keep it on their phone, but they have no true value to, no true attachment to the things that they're sometimes photographing and taking pictures of. So I think asking ourselves from in each community that we find ourselves is how can we draw this deep connection to my city, to my culture, to the experiences, to the craftsmanship found in this city, and instilling that into the younger generation. Also thinking it's going to change. I can't help that it's going to change, but I can be part of the process. Even thinking about immigrants coming in, I feel like I'm an immigrant. I am an immigrant in my city. But not everybody has the opportunity to achieve what I have achieved, and I feel very blessed to have done that. But I feel grafted into my city. I feel like I am an addition to my city, and the fruits of my hand and the work of my hand also bring beauty and uniqueness to this community that now embraced me as an immigrant. So I think immigration is very powerful, very beautiful, and that we see it as, I know it's different, but we need to embrace it and give the opportunity to see it bloom. And that's why I get to do that in my job. I get to see other people bloom, other artists bloom, because I was given that opportunity to also be present and to also be heard. So I think that's definitely beautiful. I don't know, Greg, if you want me to get into a little bit about the work that I do and the work that my organization, if that would be helpful next.
Yeah, if you want to talk a little bit about that. I mean, I think, one of the things I think was interesting, particularly with the North Shore CDC, is how it's mixing art and affordable housing. And I mean, I'm sure there's other things, you can talk about Gloucester as well, but I think about, there's often kind of sometimes there's a conflict between arts and housing and arts affordability because of a sense of it's become tourism and become gentrification. But I think the North Shore CDC has been working on a model of maintaining affordable housing while using art to try to reshape people's, racism, is a way to talk about it.
And that's just it, Greg. Art is such a powerful tool to bring people together. The community that I work with, specifically the Point neighborhood, is a historically known immigrant community. Right now, it is Latinos, people from South America, Central America is the hub. But before that, it was French Canadian. And so it's beautiful in its history. And so when we do the art events and we do have art, we also provide the educational component with it. We believe that it's irresponsible to put out a beautiful piece of art that people and tourists will come and see, and that we don't get to tell the story about French Canadian, about the Salem fires, about historic things that happened in this area, about how the Polish bought a building and they created a community club there. So like we try to understand and try to figure out what is our responsibility to this community? How can we do this fairly? How can we make art beautiful, educational? So we try to do that with educating the young students. We have a lot of schools come through and we do a tour of the art. So the kids come for the art, but they leave learning about even what redlining is. even about the history before, like who was here before the Latinos and the Haitians and the other cultures that are found here. So we really kind of like instill that we're trying. We don't have the right. I'm not saying we have all the right answers, but so far we are learning from the process of education. We are learning through the process of culture, identity, talking about the culture, talking about the richness, so that not just the narrative that is being told on the news, right? Not just the narrative that's being, the police reports and, the streets, like this look bad or whatever. Like we're also allowing the narrative to be more than just what the media and what the reporters sometimes say. One of the things that we do is with affordable housing is we have 3 projects that I'd like to quickly highlight because I want to give room and space for the conversation to keep going. But we have a building that is called Harbor Housing, and it's focused on 16 apartments for youth 18 to 24. It is a subsidized rent, and so they get to pay a little bit of money towards it. Oh, perfect! Thank you for sharing that slide. And it's beautiful on the outside, and it does a beautiful thing for the community itself. The youth that live there are paired with a residence manager that helps them figure things out at home. Someone that helps them to coordinate services like applying for jobs, connection to the community, just providing resources so they're not just have a place to live, but they have someone that can walk through with them into how to accomplish their goals, how to get a job if they need help with housing, how do they build a resume even. So it's like bringing the beauty and bringing the support that comes with it. So not only the youth that are coming out of, programs they're aging out of foster care, for example, they're also being able to sustain themselves and get them on their own feet. We also have Harbor Village, which is actually the Gloucester project that connects me to you guys. And it's 30 affordable apartments in the community on Main Street with some commercial space on the ground. It's a high efficiency building too. It has passive housing, meaning that the heat that you put into your apartment stays and the cooling that you put into your house stays there longer. So it prevents from having people pay too much money for gas. Like some of the older buildings are usually, struggle for people to maintain the good quality energy in their home. And then also the Hawthorne Boulevard is a project that we're in the pipeline of developing right now, which will be 29 units, and it's going to be 80% affordable. And that is going to be focused especially for artists. So if you're an artist, if you're a creator, and it has a broader sense of what artist is. So you can be a writer, you can be a singer, you can be a performer. And it used to be a school, which is kind of interesting. We're not necessarily putting a big building. We're kind of like repurposing a building that used to be a school. It has a beautiful big auditorium, and that will be converted into artist spaces that galleries and places where people can do performances or do their work together. So, I mean, I think all of it is just trying to advance equity and investment for the critically needed, artists or elderly, affordable housing for the elderly as well, affordable housing for people and families. So I'll stop there because I can go on forever. But
thank you, Jeanette. Thank you. I mean, I think one thing to also note in Gloucester is that Gloucester also has long seen itself as an immigrant community. It's Italians and Portuguese. And these days, like the high school used to be like 97% white 20 years ago. And now it's 80% white. It's 20% students of color. And that's shifted, over 20 years. And so it's now, we have students from Guatemala and the Dominican Republic, Brazil, families joining the city. I also want to touch on another thing, your question you sort of asked earlier. Again, sort of like, what is it, what does Gloucester mean to us, and how do we instill that, or how do we share that? I don't know if maybe Ken or Ann, do you have thoughts on that? Like, what is it we're afraid we're losing, and how do we talk about that?
Well, it's a good question, and it's very difficult, as you can imagine, to distill something like that down to its essence, and to be able to hold it in your hand and sort of examine it that way. There are things here that we think are unique to the area. We know that they're not truly unique, but they go hand in hand with the geography and the people and the industry, and those things sort of set it apart in a way. And those are the things, and we're not talking about preserving it like dipping it in amber, or going back to some imagined idyllic existence that probably never existed. We're talking about understanding what the foundations of the town are, something like what Anne was alluding to in terms of the fishing industry, and to understand that, whereas it used to be the river that ran the mill here in town, now it's one of a few rivers that run the mill, and that we need to do things to support it, to keep it going, because it really is what the town has been known for and should continue to be known for. It's a place to go fishing from, and we need to do those things that promote the industry and allow it to function. And we've had these battles in the past about land use in the designated port area, and making sure that the industry has a place to spread out its nets, do the work that needs to be done, processing and all that. So, the things that I think are important to people living here and wanting to live here, I would hope, are to keep it real in a sense, and that the reasons why people may be attracted to the area, they vary. Some people just want to come here and have a place to look out at the water, and other people want to pitch in and come to understand the community as it is and as it has been, and to do those things that are supportive of continuing that very rich legacy that makes this little town maybe among the most famous little towns in the world. I know people who go and travel, they mention this town, and for some reason, for some good reasons, hard work, a long history, it's known. It punches beyond its weight, they say. And so I'm just thinking that one of the first things we can do is to, get a sense of, like you're alluding to, Greg, that what it is that makes the town the way it is, and to try to grasp those things that keep it headed in a good direction, so that it doesn't become like Anne was talking about, Nantucket. Not that there's anything wrong with Nantucket. It's just that let Nantucket be Nantucket. There are some forces that we're not capable of standing in the way of, and there are others that we can channel into more productive outcomes. So in any event, I don't know if that answers your question, but Jeanette was saying that we owe a certain responsibility to this place, and in order to fulfill that responsibility, we first have to understand what it is that makes it the way it is. So,
Yeah, could I
And you
explain
thoughts
a
about that?
term? Could I just explain
Yeah,
a
yeah, go
term
ahead,
before
Linda,
we go
please.
on? When I refer to the new term that I came upon, parallel culture, I was not referring to immigration. I was referring to groups that have immigrated to Europe and do not wish to become part of Europe. They do not wish and will not become part of Europe. I'm not talking about immigration. I'm a first generation, basically, from another country, and so is my mother and my Indian grandfather. So, but parallel integration means people who move to one place from another, but don't intend to become part of where they go, and intend, in fact, often to undermine where they go. And I consider the ultra rich who build and leave empty, or build and invest and leave or never come. I think that is a parallel culture that I was talking about. That's all.
Thank you. And do you have thoughts along these lines? And, what is it that makes the town the way it is, or, and what is our responsibility to that?
Yeah, I mean, some people just come here and they get it instantly and they fall in love with it. The scenery, the lighting, the art, music, the people, the authentic people that were real, not a lot of airs being put on, things like that. But then there's people that move here and just want to change it. They move here because they love it and then they want to change it. I think it should be a rule that you can't even run for any city office unless you've lived here at least 15 years. Because you shouldn't be able to just move here and then go on a board and start to rezone things and change things. We have zoning in place for reasons. Certain things don't mix with each other. And then they do overlays and they change the zoning and they change the height restrictions. There's wetlands that you could never build on that I see things being built now all the time. They're always looking for height exemptions. Everything's bigger. It's just getting way out of hand, in my opinion. So I would love to have people that want to run for office at least live here 15 years in our community and spend time with all the people here and see what we're all about before they decide that they want to, get on the planning board and change zoning and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we are a very cool place. We have a lot of artists, a lot of great musicians, a lot of great writers. There's a lot of energy here. It's I don't know if it's because of all our granite and the ocean and the power of both, but we have a lot of high energy here and a lot of cool, funky people. I don't want to see them priced out and have to move out. And I just, I don't know how to describe it, but Gloucester is funky, cool, interesting, a lot of hard work, very hard work, like all the rough hands. I deal with farmers all the time now because of my job, and they're the same breed as fishermen. They can fix anything, anywhere, with anything they have. They can't just run to the store if you're out at sea or on a big farm. And they have the wrinkles in their eyes and the twinkle and the real rough, hard-working hands, and that's what built us. We work hard, we play hard, and there's just a lot of authenticness to us, which you just don't see. I've traveled around the world literally on a boat when I was younger. I toured with the Grateful Dead for years and saw every nook and cranny of this country, up to Canada, everywhere, and there is no place like Gloucester. I haven't found anywhere that's like what we have here. And I just don't want to lose that uniqueness of what made us and what we are.
Yeah.
To all this new, super rich development and big, huge buildings and no open spaces for all our kids to play. That's pretty much where I'm at with that.
It seems. I mean, maybe do people want to talk about what they mean more, like about authentic? And I think Ken used a version of that too. I can't remember keeping it real, like the sense of like, what does that mean? Like, I mean, and I just wonder sometimes, like, if it's a euphemism or something, but it's like, I mean, are we really talking about the working class? What are we talking about when you say authentic? Like, or is it, I mean, is it something, is there something we're not talking about when we say authentic? And what is it we're trying to say there?
To me, it's people that just are who they are. We are who we are. We am who we am. We don't try to be anything else. You don't put on, airs. You just don't try to be something more or different than you are. You are 100% honest to your true self. And that's what you portray. You don't even think about how should I act, or you just are. That's the best way I can describe it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I would just follow up with that, saying that, it's a sort of a live and let live kind of situation here. I don't know if it's an appropriate parallel, but, there was a time when you'd get off at the train station in town and there's no directions about where to go. And where's the downtown, where's the beaches? You basically, you get off the train and you have to ask somebody, like, where is this? I'm the new guy in town. Where's the ocean? So we've gotten to a point now where I think things are headed in this direction where everything is sort of boxed up and, made neat. And, one of the things around here is it's sort of rough edges, and we like it that way. We have these places in town where there are no traffic lights or stop signs. People sort of figure out how to get from one place to another. And it's, you're sort of on your own, but you're doing it in cooperation or in conjunction with other people who have another destination in mind. But somehow it works, and it works without, this oversight and direction. We sort of have that here. So I don't know if that's part of the authenticity of it. We're just, it's this thing about not being self-reflective. It's just the doing of things that seems to be important here, and you just go about it, and maybe that's part of it. And again, there's that real difficult aspect to put your finger on. And I think that's why people in the arts, they're trying to get people to think about things they don't think about necessarily, and to do it in a way that allows them to reflect on things even after their first impression, for example. So I think the arts are important in this discussion, because it brings to light these issues, and the artists need places to live and work, and that we need to encourage that as well. It's very important to have people here who are bringing these things to light, because we're all busy, we're all going about our daily affairs, and we don't always have a chance to look up.
Do people have thoughts on that, of how can the arts help us understand these issues, or understand this place? I don't know, maybe Jeanette?
I think, yeah, Ken, I think you're right. I think, but I want to say too, art is just one aspect of it. There's a lot more to the culture of Gloucester. There's the food, there's the craftsmanship, there is the stories and all that stuff. Like, so art is just one channel. And it happens to be the more attractive, because when you see it, your eyes is one of your sensory, like, oh, wow, okay. It's easier to do it very quickly. But there are, with North Shore CDC, something I've learned that they did 10 years ago was do their vision and action plan to the city, where they really heard what people had to say through different focus groups. What do people have to say? What do people want to see change? Kind of like visioning the next 10 years of their lives, and how, what were the goals that the organization would set to meet those needs in the next 10 years. And so every time I propose a program and I say, oh, well, I was thinking about doing this art event, and I come back to the vision and action plan. Do people in this community want this? Do they want to be known for that? Do they want to be identified for that? Do they want to be spoken of in that way? And so like it kind of keeps me on track as a project manager and as an artist, to make sure that when I have call for arts, that the artists are not coming in just putting in their own idea, but that the art also connects with the community. So that can be done through food, that can be done through music. What is the music like in Gloucester? So maybe it would be a good train of thought to like gather all these ideas and think about them in departments like the arts department, the music department, the food department, the housing department. How can all these things can work for the best of Gloucester in the future? And how can every time that somebody makes a decision, we look back to that response of the community and say, does this meet the agenda that the public of Gloucester, that the people of Gloucester want? Does this meet the agenda of me knowing my neighbors? Does this meet the agenda of me thriving as a business owner? Does this meet the agenda of me am I being represented or misrepresented with that artwork or not? And so I think that is very important to think about it like in that sense, and to like bring that, invite that train of thought into the future of Gloucester. And I agree on, like, you know, it's like when you're running for office, you must be a certain year, you know, you have to have certain years of being alive and experiences in the world. So like, you know, perhaps it's not a limitation to people who want to make good things happen, but also if someone that's new, what do they know the values, and can they make the judgment based on what the city of Gloucester wants, needs, and is working towards? If they align with that, then I support them. Then I want to see what they bring in, the new ideas, the new concepts that could advance the good agenda that we have set for our own city. So I think that's just what I have tumbling in my head right now.
Thank you. Do other people have thoughts about like how the arts can help us with this?
Valerie asked me to tell a story, a quick one. I lived for 20 years in Vermont, and while I was there, I was waiting on table when I wasn't adjuncting, and got to know people who were originally from Stowe, Vermont, which is a great ski area, as we all know. But these are the people who lived there, you know, the late 50s or so, when it really just began. And eventually everybody who lived in Stowe was priced out of their own town. And they were priced out of their own town, and they had to move across over the mountain to Waterville. And they ended up in trailer parks in Waterville, because even Waterville's property values went up so much. And they used to commute over the mountain every day to run the ski lifts and to clean the hotels and to, you know, do the scut work of the tourist industry in Stowe. And all of Stowe, all of real working class, little frame house Stowe, and all the seniors, people like me, I'm going to be 78 this summer. I went alone to Alaska at the age of 50 to earn my own retirement. And I really feel like a fool for doing that now that I'm back in Massachusetts. I would have better if I had done nothing. But what I'm saying is, where am I going to go? Where are people in my economic situation going to go? As Gloucester becomes this other culture, this parallel universe of unoccupied mansions. That story of Stowe and Waterville is, I think, really, really important to Gloucester to keep in mind, because we'll all go inland where it's cheaper. We'll all be moving to, you know, we'll be commuting out of the center of the state to come to our crummy jobs in Gloucester, our service jobs. That's what's going to happen to us all.
Yeah. We're at just about 2 o'clock, and so we were going to take questions from the audience via the chat now. So I guess I'll start reading through some of those. Brian King had said, Portuguese Hill, one of our most diverse neighborhoods, historically lower income immigrants and triple deckers with affordable rent, is being developed rapidly. Could there be local tax incentives for landlords to keep their rents affordable without having to become HUD developers? I'm not sure if we're qualified to answer that question, but does anybody here feel that they're qualified to that, or should I move on? I mean, it's a really good point.
Yeah, I would just say I agree. He's right about that.
They do it in New York. I just got back from New York City, and they managed to have housing that is rent managed or something. They can't do more than, you know, they do it other places. We could learn how.
Right. And I would just say that, yeah, there are, I mean, the Gloucester Housing Authority, through its federal and state housing, has the ability to help subsidize rents in certain situations. And they also provide housing that is not portable, like Section 8. So I think there are things there. I mean, so I don't know about local tax incentives, but yeah, there are things going on that try to help people who need assistance in paying their rent. It used to be that rent used to be, you know, a quarter of your monthly income was spent towards rent, and now it's sort of pushing up into the 30s and 40s, and that's becoming, and in some places it's even more. But that's yeah, that's something we need to keep at.
And I don't think we're talking about welfare people. I think we're talking about hardworking people that are, I mean, not to say that they're not, but we're talking about people that are working every day and working hard and making a living. It's just the rent is so out of proportion with what most people can make. That's the problem.
That's
And
it.
mortgages.
If I could add too, I'm not super well versed on this, but I can just quickly say that in the Point neighborhood, right next to downtown Salem, has over 1 million visitors every year, especially during Halloween season. That area is critical because if you love Salem and you want to be part of the experience of the witch trials and everything, then you're looking for the cheapest area, right, to live. So that area is in danger of being gentrified every single day. North Shore CDC owns about 400 units in the community, old buildings that were depleted, and they are redone and also become affordable from then on. So that people that live there, they call this place their home and they don't have to move out because the rent will also be maintained, right? So like that's also a way of like converting buildings and neighborhoods to have a portion of those buildings to be affordable. And managed and taken care of well, so they're not just also falling apart. The people in the Point call their community their home, and they don't have to be scared about people coming in and taking over and doing and having their own agenda be fed to them. They have a say.
I think that was the brilliant thing that North Shore CDC did in Salem that Lynn didn't do. When you put in all that art and made it this vibrant go-to location, you did it all on affordable buildings. So just because a building has a cool mural doesn't mean someone can now jack up the rent. And that is what happened in Lynn. They did an art effort, public art, and then those buildings became unaffordable to those who were living in them. So I think that was very smart on North Shore CDC's part to really think it through long-term about what the impact of that project would be on the local neighborhood. So I think that's an important thing to remember with anything going forward. For art and housing, you need to think about what the long-term positives and negatives might be.
Let me keep going through the questions we have. So Val Gilman says, panelists, it's invaluable to hear your thoughts and opinions. If you can be specific with the types of zoning ordinance that you don't feel are working to benefit those groups who are most vulnerable, please share what they are. Again, I'm not sure if we're an expert on that, but do people have quick thoughts on that one?
Well, I know what zoning ordinances aren't being enforced. They're the height and setbacks and a number of dwellings per, it's dimensional zoning all the dimensional zoning regulations. The city would be fine if everything kept to 30 feet as it's supposed to. I mean, it's really very simple. They won't do it. They won't enforce them. So, and Val knows this.
I think people, throughout today have suggested, a number of people here in the panel have said that one of the key values they have of the city is the sense of scale, I guess, of kind of the size of the buildings and the spaces around them.
I would say to Val, like, just stop when there's a 30-foot height. That's it. Don't override things. When it's marine industrial zoning, don't override it to put an overlay to allow something that's not marine industrial there. Stop changing the zoning and giving special permits to people because of what you foresee as benefiting the city by more tax dollars. Just leave things are set up for a reason, and that's why they are set up. So let that be.
I would just add to that I remember Councillor Gilman was very attentive a couple of years ago when folks were talking about tiny houses and being able to bring, structures, like Greg says, in scale and to make allowances in the ordinances for situations like that. Tiny houses, again, being reviewed by the state sanitary code to allow for municipalities to make exceptions in some cases for people to construct those and to have those on their property. So, that could be, I mean, there's the things that you can do that prevent certain things. And then there's the things that the city can do to encourage the type of development that it does want.
Let me say, some people had their hands up. If you could put the questions in the chat, I guess that's what we're doing. So, Marsha Hart had a number of comments, and one of them was, well, I feel very concerned about Gloucester remaining a place where artists can afford to live, but talking about that in isolation seems to have been pretty fruitless. It seems to me that lack of live work artist housing is a symptom of the larger problem of community member displacement. The environmental movement and climate movement have become much more inclusive and effective by finding its commonality with public health and justice and equity advocates. We need an all hands on deck approach to shrinking the variety of people who can end up living here. And then she clarifies, it's not about keeping anyone out, it's about not pushing those who love to be here out, about displacement. It's not exactly a question there, but do people have thoughts about that?
Some artists are rich. They're not all poor.
Yeah, it's a melting pot. We encourage all different types of people, all different walks of life. We're not saying no rich people, of course. I hope to be a rich person someday.
Let's see, we had some people saying, what did I miss? Alexander said, Gloucester, it's neighborhoods where kids can play and people know one another, access to great outdoors for all, properties where extended families can live. Peter Parsons says, fishermen equals farmers of the sea. Patty Page says, the rebranding of Gloucester to Harbor Town says it all. Let me see if I can get somebody who hasn't had a chance. Stephen Volt says, I'm hearing a frustration with the super high cost of housing here, but also with the city letting too many new buildings go up. I'm concerned that if we don't build enough new units for people to live in, the cost of the housing we have is going to keep going up. Though building a lot of new units is going to change at least some aspects of what we have now. I'd love to hear how people on the panel resolve that conflict. It's a really good point. I think there's a sort of tension between sort of like wealth and scale and insider, residents and newcomers. And maybe this sort of talks about that too. People trying to stay here but can't afford it. So how do we rectify that, with the concerns perhaps about too dense of housing?
Well, I don't know how you resolve that. When you come right down to it, there's a supply and demand thing here. But somebody was talking about the fact that there's a lot of homes here that are, vacant most of the year. People come here for the summer. And the question is, increasing the supply of affordable housing. That's the challenge. It's not so much making sure that people don't, build the houses that they want. It has to do with increasing supply for the things that you need. There's a lot of people. I don't know if it's called you're overhoused, but if you have one person, rattling around in a 20-room house, that's great for that person, I guess. But it doesn't wind the clock for a lot of people in terms of the types of the type of community that you want to have, which is diverse on a lot of levels, income diversity as well. So
I don't think it's that we don't have enough housing. I think that the housing is too expensive. So I'm not saying we need to build more housing so that we can have affordable, because it never works out as truly affordable anyway. What's changed in the last 10 years? We've had 30,000 people in Gloucester for 100 years, and everybody's been able to afford to live here. Now, all of a sudden, it's changed. It's not because we don't have enough housing. It's because the housing we have has gone way up. And I think that's the issue more than we need to build more housing.
Yes, and I don't think this group has complained that there's too much new housing being built. I haven't heard that complaint. The complaint I've heard is that too much housing that's being built is not being built according to the existing social contract we all share. that's manifest in the zoning ordinances.
Damon Cummings talks about in the chat, talks some about, again, that sense of scale and zoning ordinances. Martin Ray says, one of the underlying strands to the panelist stories may be that the effort to make community life safe, equitable, and efficient can lead to unaffordability, both in price and funkiness. For instance, the absence of traffic lights allows us to be thoughtful about how we navigate and give each other a break. Henry Freeney says, the natural beauty of Gloucester and its people says it all. The work is not the real estate interest of the world. I'm missing it. The work is not the real estate interest of the world to pave it over, I think is what he's saying. Forgive me. Amanda Nash has a number of comments. One is they're making people put parking underneath because climate change, so folks want to go higher. I agree with not making exceptions for stupid or no good reason, but we do have to be flexible because things are changing. We should also be restricting those waterfront new constructions. I think she's talking there about scale, about, like, how do we deal with the height restrictions if people are required to put parking there? Do you have thoughts on that one?
Well, because of the floodplain, now you're forced to build your garage on the first level and then your living space above that. So a lot of people are saying, well, if it was 30 feet and then they have to build 10 feet where you can't live, we should give them 40 feet so you're not restricting. But maybe they just have to build a smaller house.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'll talk to Patty. Page said something about Harbor Town, and that, brings up a lot in my brain about social engineering that came to Gloucester, and a lot of people, changing the names of what the Heritage Center is no longer the Heritage, just changing names of things that get into people's head and doesn't give you that same sense of how it's always been. Now it's a new name. People that are trying to get their way with certain buildings, try to really engineer the people of Gloucester's way of thinking about it. So you're an obstructionist if you're not for it. And all these things that are going on off our coast is a direct correlation, in my opinion. They want to drill out there, rare and precious metals, pipelines, wind turbines, all these different things that they want to do to our ocean. They are leasing it now to stakeholders, which I do believe is unconstitutional. I really think it's the right of the commons out there. They're taking over the ocean, and I do believe that has a lot to do with why they want the fishermen off the water. They're the eyes and ears out there, and I think they just really want to run amok and do a lot of things we don't approve of. Aquaculture, a lot of different things off our coast that are happening now that have a lot to do with how we're being manipulated and changing, in my opinion, and how a big reason why fishing isn't what it used to be, not because of the fish, but because of the regulations. And everybody in Gloucester should start paying attention to that.
We've hit the 2:15 limit there. And I want to thank everybody for all that they said. I think we've talked about a lot of things that we value in Gloucester. We've talked about the scale of the housing, the natural resources, fishing industry and the arts, the funky people, the authentic people, and so on. And I think there's a lot here to continue thinking about and think about what are next steps and that sort of thing. I want to thank all the Linda and Jeanette and Ken and Anne for being such great speakers. And to the all the people at the Gloucester Cultural Initiative, forgive me, at the Gloucester Cultural Initiative for being for organizing these great forums. And then the idea is now that we are going to sort of open it up for a community discussion. And I feel like I sort of I don't know if maybe Susan Aroney should maybe say something first, because she was trying, I think, to say something but didn't get into the chat. So, but I think Susan can start, and then I can open up kind of a group discussion. Thanks, everyone.
I'm going to say goodbye. I have to get going to work. It's our busy season, but thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you, Greg and Linda. And this was wonderful. Thank you so much. This is Valerie.
Yes, thank you so much. Also, thank you for having me as an outsider. And also, I hope that one day we get to meet and maybe have a coffee together.
Yes.
And introduce me to everything there is to learn about Gloucester, because I am falling in love even more as I hear you guys speak about it. So thank you for having me. Have a great
And welcome here on Harbor Village. Welcome.
Susan, do you want to unmute yourself and you can speak?
Greg, are you talking to me?
Yeah, Susan Airney.
Oh, well, I wasn't struggling to say anything. But of course I can always say something. And the issue at the top of my mind is that we have incredible problems here with housing. I mean, I worked with immigrants in this community from the Middle East, and finding housing is almost impossible for them. They may have to leave, which breaks their hearts. There's some of the students who changed the color of the Gloucester schools. But I'm wondering, I mean, the project in Lynn is fabulous that uses the arts to paint murals. I'm wondering how exactly we're talking about bringing the arts into this and what role artists can do. I mean, we can paint murals. In the past, when I've done work myself as an artist on social issues, it's been on larger, not community-based social issues, but issues like genocide. And I deeply believed at one point that the arts could help change the world, and that, if we all put the pain of genocide in front of everyone in the world, it would make a difference. And of course, it didn't. I mean, it's ridiculous. This was about 40 years ago, 30 years ago. So, I just really see the arts in two ways in this kind of struggle. One is to get out on the streets and do stuff and put work in front of people that address social issues so that people gather together. The arts can be used to form community in that sense, to bring people together to discuss issues of great import. And the other way, of course, is to beautify the community, as with murals, as with other projects like that, music on the streets, dance in the streets. In other cultures, at times when the artists were involved in revolutionary actions, it was often in line with actually governmental help, like in the United States. I mean, I go back all the time, and Judith Hoaglander will, of course, understand this, but I go back to the New Deal in the United States, the Federal Arts Project, where artists were actually used to create social change by the government. So artists were sent in to create community art centers where people could go for free, and people saw professional artists for the first time in their lives, learned how to paint, use the arts to deal with some of the anxiety of the situations they were going through. So I think that's a wonderful function, but then you need, if artists are going to survive, we can't volunteer 100% of the time. So, having the government behind the arts at that point was crucial. And of course, supporting plays that addressed social issues, forming theater companies that employed peoples of color for the first time on any scale. All this was going on, run by the government, who looked to the Mexican government as an example to model on, because the arts had a great role in the Mexican Revolution. So I'm just wondering how the people on the panel and the people who set this up, like Valerie, how do you see making something happen actually with the arts, rather than, having some artists and bringing people together to talk about these issues as separate from the arts? So that's the stuff that's been going through my mind.
Can I just clarify one thing? That's really great, Susan. The project. I'm sorry, this is gonna make it awkward, but The project, it's not in Lynn, it's in Salem. It's
Oh,
in,
I'm
it's in
sorry.
Salem. And if
Of
I understand
course.
it correctly, basically what they do is the CDC owns the affordable housing, and that's how they make it work. And then the issue, one of the long-standing issues is that because it's primarily people from Central and South America, that there's a lot of racism against those people who live there, and also because of the poverty. And so the mural program, they're not murals about that issue. So much. They're murals basically that make the community beautiful and attractive to outsiders, so that people come there and rethink, like see the community and get a firsthand understanding of it. So they're not just coming through biases, but also it counters their biases by like just envisioning what the community is through the art murals. But they're not like the murals that are like murals about the problems. They're murals that are just
Right.
defining the community. But I mean, I think these are really great questions you have, Susan, about, and other people can answer them, about how do we bring the arts to this to make something happen? You know, how do we make this happen financially? That kind of stuff. And you had pointed it to Valerie. I just wanted to clarify about the Salem thing.
So this is Valerie, and I have no explicit answer to you, Susan, because my hope was that you don't rush ahead to the answers. You need to start right at the beginning of what are we seeing, feeling, hoping, fearful of, losing. Let's have this conversation first, and then we'll see what all the wonderful things that were said and ponder how we can move forward. But I do agree that the whole premise of the Arts Insight and Community Building series is that artists are integral, not for their own purposes, in part it is, but as such important members of the wider community, so that all of our issues become, as I think someone said in the chat room, we are in this together, and artists can help better than a lot of the rest of us, help us to understand ourselves and ask ourselves questions. So we're hoping there will be future sessions and future discussions, to be determined. And if you have some ideas, please let us know.
I completely agree with you about using the arts to bring people together.
Yeah.
I think they're great at that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
And I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Oh, no.
I just wanted to know if you had any-
that
that one step at a time.
Well, yeah, and let's see how it emerges sort of naturally before we rush ahead. So I think today has been wonderful discussion. And then we'll think about what to do next.
Gotcha.
Susan is in possession of the idea that the purpose of art is revolution. I mean,
No.
No, I didn't say it was in possession of you. I said you were in possession of the idea. But there are many who say, if you think about it hard enough, you know, art is either about supporting existing ideology and social structures, or it's about changing them. And you know, a lot of people never get to the point in their own art where they confront the fact that they're on one side of the fence or the other. But art is either supporting things or making an effort to change them. You know, that's the old left. And I think it's absolutely true.
Well, I think, yeah, that's the old left, I think, in many ways, right?
Yes.
That it's black and white. And I'm not sure I agree with that, though I definitely agree that there's art that has been used to support horrible ends and as huge tools of propaganda.
Yes, of course. Of course. It's not,
Yeah.
I didn't mean a reductionist statement.
Yeah.
Do we want to,
But
I
it
saw
can
that
be.
Patty Page wanted to say something. Do you want to go ahead?
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the discussion from the Cultural Initiative and Valerie for setting this up. I always appreciate Val Gilman's attendance in these things too. The rebranding in Gloucester is, you know, a reality. We were a blue collar working town completely. There were always artists and summer residence and big hotels. And, we have a lot of diversity, and we always thrived on that diversity. But when you start to change the nomenclature, when no Harbortown Cultural District, we don't even know where Harbortown is. It's downtown. Thank you, Ken. It's downtown. So when you get these pressures from wherever these things come from, you don't retain the same character. You don't retain the same sense of place. I do a lot of advocacy, particularly around the waterfront, with Anne Malloy and different people. It's difficult. It's difficult when you get an overlay project and they say, this isn't going to harm you, this isn't going to hurt. And then, it isn't one or two locations, it's the domino effect that it does create. Now we're looking at Shaolin Lu 2 and I4C2. Nothing says gentrification better than a performance theater in the middle of our Harbor Cove, which is one of the remaining places where they actually land fish and lobsters and things. Bookend with a boutique hotel and a event restaurant dinner ship. I mean, that is gentrification. If that becomes a reality, that's how I see it. We already have a recreational marina in Harbor Cove. We're just aghast at these things. When they relieved us from a portion of the DPA in East Gloucester, we all said, fine, that's the section that looks like that should happen in, and the remaining portion of this remains industrial. Well, they don't hold to any of their promises, if I could even call it a promise. So it's really, really difficult to, maintain these things. And, I don't object to these cultural centers. Don't misunderstand me. I think the Rocky Neck Cultural District is accurate. That's where artists are. That's where artists were. That's, it's a good thing. So, I don't want to, make any inference against the arts. Certainly it's valuable, and they've been here and bring a lot of, not just monetary wealth, but a lot of richness to our communities, to this community. So I don't really have a question, but that's my commentary. Thank you.
Would other people like to chime in? We're hitting kind of 2:30.
May
So
I
go
have
ahead.
1
Yeah,
minute?
go. Maybe Val, and then maybe we wrap it up after Val. Does that
Great.
sound good?
I'll be really short. Two things
Please.
come to mind. I always listen to these great conversations, and my brain always starts thinking about best practices. What are other cities and towns doing to be successful in the areas that we just talked about? So that's always one of my challenges, is you come back to people in the city council with examples of best practices and get us thinking of tangible ways that we can make progress with some of these issues, which are really important. So that's one thing. And the other thing is we're kind of coming up to an opportune time with the election coming up this year. And one of the things that I've always loved about Val Nelson and the Lanesville Community Center is they always come up with themes at the different at-large debates and even ward debates at the Lanesville Community Center. So I just throw that out as a possible nice time for this group to think about particular questions that they might want to ask when you start trying to plan Zoom debates right now for the summer. Just a good way to get people thinking strategically, because a lot of times it's hard to think strategically when we're overwhelmed with just all the day-to-day business of what's in front of us, and we need to be thinking strategically. So those are my two comments, and I took longer than a minute, but thank you. This has been interesting. Thank you for letting me sit in and listen.
So Greg, before you end this, I'd like to thank Val Gilman for coming, and also to be able to mention, I think, a remarkable thing she started around the Lanesville quarries. For those who didn't attend last Thursday, she sent out a survey, part of which asked about how we as neighbors here feel about where we live. And the comments that my neighbors out here sent in were just remarkable, because about the beauty and the woods and the serenity and tranquility and the water and the beaches and the neighbors and what I found remarkable was that all you have to do is ask people what they love about this place, and it comes gushing out. And we haven't had that opportunity to talk to each other about this place, whether it's Gloucester as a whole or our neighborhoods. And so it's good to go back as we did today and try, as you said, Ken, to figure some of this out, but to plumb the depths of why we are so attached to this place and do that before we decide on quarry management plans. So, and other such things. So thank you, Val, for doing that. And I think it's on the same track in a way as what we were trying to do here today. Let's listen to ourselves first about this place.
Definitely. That we love. Thank you.
Yeah, that we love. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you again, everybody. That's a great place to end. Let's wrap it up there. Thanks again, everyone. And goodbye, I guess.
Thank you all.
Greg.